Welcome to Viewpoints. I'm Chris Graham.
And I'm Crystal Graham. In recent days, there's been historic flooding in Mississippi and Louisiana. And among the groups on the front lines are the American Red Cross and the Salvation Army.
Yeah, we also had, of course, recently in the last month or so, Crystal, some disaster closer to home in West Virginia. And of course, these organizations are so good about providing that frontline assistance. You know, there are governmental units that are out there that get involved, but these non-governmental units are so essential to providing necessary emergency assistance resources. And we thought we would want to use the show this week to highlight one of our local organizations that is on the front lines of providing not only emergency assistance in disasters, but also day-to-day needs for a lot of needy families. And that's the Salvation Army. We have with us today a couple of guests from the Salvation Army of Waynesboro. And, the Salvation Army last year, Crystal, celebrated its 150th anniversary. It was founded in 1865 in Great Britain and has a long reputation for serving the needs of people in need throughout the world, 127 countries throughout the world.
Right, and I think most of us know about the Red Kettle campaigns that go on at Christmas, but this is an organization that runs all year long and fundraises all year long.
And specific to Waynesboro then, talking about the need in the local communities, and since we have our guests from Waynesboro today, Waynesboro, the day-to-day needs are so substantial. A per capita income, median family income, about 3/4 of the statewide average. 60% of the kids in the local school system want free or reduced lunch. So there are obviously daily needs that need to be met. And the Salvation Army, one of those organizations that really steps up to help provide for those needs in our community.
And I know recently with Augusta Free Press, you sat down to interview a couple of folks, and that was your reason for inviting them on today.
That's right. So let's go to our first guest, Jason Perdue. He is the Corps Officer with the Salvation Army in Waynesboro. And Jason, welcome to the show, and tell us a little bit about what you do and what the Salvation Army does in our community.
Well, first let me say thank you for having us. It's a privilege to be here. I am Captain Jason Perdue, with the Salvation Army in Waynesboro. I'm the Corps Officer, so what that means is my wife and I are the pastors and overseers, commanding officers of the social services program, our family store, and our congregation, including after-school programs and activities.
And Angie Engelman is also joining us. And Angie is the person that I got to interview for the Augusta Free Press a few weeks ago. And she's now retired after 33 years with the Salvation Army in Waynesboro, serving, I guess we could say officially as case manager. Angie, welcome to the show, and tell us a little bit about what you've done, if you could encompass 33 years of what you were able to do at the Salvation Army.
Case management. I also have been able to get great collaboration in the community over the past 33 years with the churches and organizations that we all work together as best we can, to help people as much as we can. Over the years, I also was allowed to go to 9/11 up at the Pentagon, and that was awe-inspiring, the things that were happening up there and that we were able to be a part just to help a little bit up there in Washington. I've mainly tried to, and the Salvation Army is also my church. So I've been very much active in that too over the past 33 years with grandkids that are part of it now.
We want to talk more about your experiences as the show goes on, but part of the reason that we brought you here today is because when you announced that you were going to retire, you're kind of the face of the organization. The captains, the leaderships, they change from year to year. They don't stay in Waynesboro at least for a long period of time. And so over these 33 years, you really are the face of the organization. And the board of directors, from what I understand, basically said, we're not just giving her a plaque, we're not giving her something to put on a shelf, because that's not what she would want. She would want something that gives to the community. And so basically Miss Angie's Fund was born.
That's right. And so talk about Miss Angie's Fund. That's a way to honor you, but also it's a way to provide for those needy families throughout the year. The Red Kettle campaign is something that's done at Christmas time, but there are needs 12 months out of the year, and that's what Miss Angie's Fund is being created to try to meet those needs.
Yes, it is, because there was a logo we had at one time, need has no season. Mm-hmm. And so it's true. Christmas is very important for the children and the families that need help with food and help for Christmas. But that continues on throughout the year. It doesn't stop at Christmas. There's needs for utilities. There's needs for rent. There's needs for different things, you know, clothing and food and sometimes motels if we have the funds for it. And so, yes, sir, I believe that's why Miss Angie's Fund was started.
Mm-hmm.
Jason, talk more about the need, and as someone who deals with the budgets on a day-to-day basis and a yearly basis, the need in the Waynesboro community and how this fund can maybe help boost what the Salvation Army does in Waynesboro.
Well, the need has no season is so true. People get caught up at Christmas and think that we can get through Christmas and everything will be fine the rest of the year. And the funding that we get goes to all of the programs and activities and the services that we provide throughout the year. And during the time we get to the summer, those are the lean months. Those are when donations seem to slow down and the need becomes really great. We have people who are dealing with their utilities, their rent, their food. And when you have a mom with 3 children or a dad with 3 children that come and they have no air conditioning and it's 98, 99 degrees, it's tough. And the hardest thing is when we have no funding, as trying to scramble to find other churches and places to help us find those funding. And so what the board came to me and our regional development director, they came to us and said, we have an idea. Let's create a lasting legacy for Angie. And this way, Miss Angie will always be connected with the social services program. And we just thought, man, this is a really wonderful idea. Now, there was a misconception at one point that Miss Angie's Fund was raising money to give to Angie for her retirement.
That would be nice.
That would be nice.
It would.
But, and she wouldn't have accepted it anyway. But it's just a really neat idea for us to create a fundraiser. And not only that, but honor this lady, Angie, who's an angel.
Oh, I want to talk more about the funding and your levels of funding and that kind of thing. But, he calls you an angel. And I have to wonder, on a personal level, how does this feel for you to be honored in this way by the board and the community?
I'm humbled by it. I am honored. Sorry. Because it does mean a lot, because that's what I have tried to do for 33 years, to be of service. And more than a handout, but a service to people so they know that they're connected, Like he says in our church, they're a family. But we can help them if the resources are available. And so I'm honored by it, deeply.
Your history with Salvation Army, you went to the church before you started working with Salvation Army, is that right?
Yes, sir.
And so how did you get involved, first with the church and then deciding to work with the Salvation Army 33 years ago?
Well, I was 5 years old, and a couple of our uncles took us to the Salvation Army on Sunday mornings. And then my mother started, and then my father, and they were both blessed by the Lord through the experience of the Salvation Army. And so we grew from there. Grew up in everything that's offered, the youth programs that is available. We have boys and girls that activities during the winter time. And then we have a Core Cadet program which helps young people to train them to be the next leaders. Because right now our young people are our next leaders, and we need to help them to grow, to know the Lord, and to be able to witness to other people.
And so your involvement came along when? When did you actually start working for them, and what has your role been over the years?
Okay, I started when I was 32 years old. I had just recently got married again. And so Captain James Allison was our officer at that time, and I was a single parent. I was getting ready to be married, and I was a single parent. And he asked me if I would take my sister's place, and she was leaving the Army. And I said, sure, I'll take it. That was my desire forever, to be a part of the Salvation Army as like that, in the service part. And so it was an answer to me, and it's my calling as a ministry to be part of that.
Jason, tell your story a little bit too. You've been here in Waynesboro for 4 years. You and your wife Alicia obviously work together. You're there at the Salvation Army in Waynesboro together, and you've traveled around a lot together. You talk about your experiences, how you got involved in the Salvation Army, and then what you and your wife do.
Well, for me, at the age of 27, 2002, I was going through a really tough time. I was battling some issues with alcohol. And I went back to work at the Salvation Army summer camp that I grew up working at over the years. And a little boy turned my life around. He wasn't even supposed to be in my cabin. And then that opened up another door to where I was given an opportunity for employment in youth ministry at the Salvation Army in Fairfax. Did that for 6 years. Ran back into, my wife and I had worked at that same camp as teenagers and couldn't stand each other. And it's funny how years later we ended up bumping into each other by accident at a conference, and automatically I fell in love. We got married and went into the seminary, the Salvation Army School for Officers Training, for 2 years in Atlanta. And then our first official appointment together was in Washington, D.C. Wow. And then we're blessed to be able to be here in Waynesboro, where we pray that we never get a phone call and move. We absolutely love it. And so my wife and I, like I say, we oversee all the programs. We're the pastors. And we are just so blessed to be able to do what we get to do. We don't go to work, we get to go to work.
Before our interview, we were talking about your experiences in D.C., and you shared a couple of interesting stories. I mean, the needs were stark there. You lived in the neighborhoods that were the toughest ones to really serve. At the Anacostia neighborhood, talk about, I mean, one day I think you're serving food and someone shows up, the victim of a gunshot wound?
Yeah, actually it was our first day in the office in Washington, D.C., and we did a feeding program 3 days a week where we fed homeless people. And I was walking around just getting to know my staff and greeting people, and then walks a gentleman who had apparently been shot 3 times but wasn't even concerned. The needs in D.C. are a lot different here, but there's need everywhere. And it's amazing to me some of the things that actually goes on right here in Waynesboro. You don't have to be a big city to have needs and to deal with people who are victims or in danger. We see those needs every day. We see the single moms that come in. Some have been abused, some are on the run, some are hiding. And one of the things we've noticed is a lot of new single dads. Dads they'll take responsibility in raising children. So it's a different dynamic. We participate with a thermal shelter during the winter months, and our building is used for a place of refuge from the cold. And we've seen that dynamic change. It's getting younger. The homeless population, we've noticed, is starting to be younger, 18, 19, 20 years old. So we see different aspects of the homelessness and all the needs, and it's amazing.
Angie, I know you're recently retired, but since you have been serving our community for 33 years now, I'm curious as to what you saw on a day-to-day basis. You know, he mentions homelessness and dads, but what kind of requests did you see most often in the Waynesboro community?
It varied. Mostly people calling saying my lights are off, I have babies in the home, and getting them in so that they could, we could help them. People being evicted, and they be coming in, and we're trying to do what we can. Sometimes we can't. But there's other resources that I can try to refer them to. That's where the collaboration part has come in, where the people in the community help as well.
I imagine that's difficult because you're dealing with a lot of people who are in very desperate situations,
Yes.
and you might be the only resource they feel they have.
Sometimes they do. But then sometimes we can open up another door for them if we don't have the resources that's out there. We also collaborate with, like you said, with the homeless shelter and social services and churches, and then we try to do our own.
When we talked a few weeks ago, Angie, for the interview we did for Augusta Free Press, I remember talking about this aspect of where sometimes you're that last resort for a lot of people, and it can be hard for you to compartmentalize how this is a job, but it's also something you do and you love what you do. And I think you said your motto maybe is "It's not my fault," something along those lines. Like if you're not able to provide, you have to have some way to dissociate from that. But it's tough because it means so much to you.
It is very tough. You can sit there and you're listening, and my heart goes out to them, and sometimes I can't, and then I have to stop and say, I didn't put them in this position, but sometimes it's not their fault either. There are some it is. They could have prevented it. But for the most part, most of them, sometimes it's not their fault. Somebody got sick, lost income. Somebody had to move, and therefore they needed extra income in order to move. I mean, it's just a lot of different reasons. You know, it isn't just one. You know, you can't put, people say variables. Well, the variables are so wide that you can't just pinpoint anything with any one family. It changes from each family that walks through that door. And I've been blessed that even I've been able to pray with them when they let me. You know, I can pray, and I can offer them that kind of peace as they walk out the door, and a plan of action. Most of the time, we can.
Yeah, Jason, how much funding actually comes from the Red Kettle campaign itself as part of your overall budget? And maybe how is this Miss Angie's Fund going to possibly be able to help as far as filling in the gap?
Well, it's amazing. When I first moved here and they told me that I have 5 Kettle locations, coming from a place where I had 40, I was kind of concerned. What are we going to do with 5 locations? And this community is absolutely amazing. I think last year we raised about $74,000 in those few locations and the times that we were allowed out there. And that funding goes to support. And by the time we get to June, that money's pretty much depleted. And so that's why Miss Angie's fund is so important. The other thing is we try to place ourselves in the shoes of others, and we realize that every one of us is one scenario away from being on the receiving end. I know as a little boy that my family, I've grown up, I'm a 4th generation Salvationist, but there have been times where we may have needed something. And that's one thing I love about this community, is that this community takes care of each other. You know, knowing that anything could happen at any given moment. And so that's why we are just so thankful and blessed for this community. Already the Miss Angie's Fund has brought in more funds than we had thought that we would have at this point. One of the things I do want to say is put a plug in for our Pathway of Hope program. Pathway of Hope was started with Miss Angie and myself at a training in Atlanta. And we were one of 32 Salvation Armies in this division to be the pilot program because of Miss Angie's extensive work in social services. And what that is, that's an extensive program. Instead of putting emergency disaster just one time, we're getting to the core problems. We want to find out, why is the heat going up? Why are you in this situation? Let's deal with that situation. We're going to put time and effort and even finances to move people along through this program. It could take up to 6 months. But we want to help battle the intergenerational cycle of poverty. We've got families who are living without hope because mom lived this way and grandma lived this way and I'm doomed. And we want to get the message out there that there is a pathway of hope. And so we're doing anything and everything we can to not only fix the problem at hand, but we want to help fix people. My motto in life is we need to leave people better than we find them, because we could be on the receiving end as well at some point.
Yeah, to use the analogy, we're talking about flooding at the top of the show. You're not just bailing water out. That's the emergency need, the immediate need, but you're hopefully going to provide people with those resources to be able to better their lives.
Teaching people to fish.
That's right. That's right. We want to invite our listeners, of course, as you're watching the show, our viewers, join us on our live blog. We actually are live blogging on Augusta Free Press, the website, also on Facebook at Augusta Free Press and WVPT. We'll throw the questions to Jason and to Angie after the show. Anything you have to really add to this conversation after the show, we want to kind of get your thoughts as well.
Absolutely. And, Angie, we've been talking that now you're retired. I can't imagine what your life is like now. Like, what do you wake up every day without going into the office, so to speak? What's life like for you now?
Well, I live in the Waynesboro Warm Shelter. I'm the house parent there. And so I have some things I need to catch up on there because I've been living there for over a year. But last week I had a meltdown. It was hard because I'm used to getting up and going. And so my daughter gave me a sign and said the plaque to put on my wall, reinvent your routine. And that takes a little bit of time and thinking of how I'm going to reinvent what I'm doing.
Jason, as a Corps officer, I was going to ask this earlier, as a Corps officer at this Salvation Army unit, how invaluable is it to have someone like Angie on staff that is, with her 33 years experience, I mean, she's now retired, but she's still going to volunteer and she still does so many different things. Having someone like her who can connect all the dots? I'm sure it's very important.
It's very important. And when we talked about the process some time ago, when Angie came to me and said, "Okay, I think it's time for me to retire," first thing I got scared. Angie's had a tough year. She lost her husband back in March, and that was a real tough time. But I'm going to say this, that not only did I always respect you and love you and appreciate you, my wife and I had to sit in her chair for a couple of days. I don't know how she does what she did for 33 years. I mean, she knows anybody and everybody when there's a problem. She knows what church to call, what group to call, and it's so important and it's so necessary. And she is just a wealth of knowledge when it comes to that. And so that's why we've told her she can retire, but not retire fully.
Big shoes
has
to
a home.
fill.
Yes, huge shoes to fill.
I'm sure procedurally there had to be a transition in place. I mean, training someone and to try to replicate what you've been able to do all these years. I'm sure that's an important part of this process.
It's interesting, this dynamic, because everybody knows Miss Angie. And Miss Angie started when she was 32 years old. And so we were interviewing candidates to come alongside to learn the process, and we received somebody who has history with social services, whose name is Angie.
Uh-oh.
So Angie, who is now the new case manager, is also 32 years old when she started working for the Salvation Army. So Miss Angie will always be there, and so when people come in and say, "I need to see who's the new girl," well, that's the new Miss Angie. So it's funny how that worked out.
It is. Jason, I just wanted to fill in a little bit too. You mentioned that you hope Waynesboro is your home forever, yet you know that's probably not going to be the case. In the Salvation Army, the history is that you move around a lot. I guess it's every April you get the call. And knowing that you're not going to be here forever, I'm sure you maybe want to weigh in a little bit with Waynesboro and your experiences and, what you hope for the future.
Well, I've just been tremendously blessed. When we first moved here, the Salvation Army was in a little bit of a debt. And this community rallied around us. Within 3 months, with a matching grant, we were able to eradicate the debt. Waynesboro has become my home, and it's in my heart. And even when I get the phone call, the dreaded phone call that it's time for us to move, Waynesboro will always have a special place in my heart. I've just never seen a community as loving, as giving, as caring. This doesn't happen in other places. The things that we experience here, people just stopping in to say hello, and even 3.5 years later saying, "Man, I'm so glad you're here in our presence." This community has embraced us, and when that phone call comes, we're going to be going kicking and screaming.
I was going to say, how tough is that? Because you've already made the move once. You'll be making it again at some point. We hope for not a long time. We hope it's off a few years at least in the future. But how tough is that personally? Because you build those roots, you build that foundation, and you got to uproot and go somewhere else.
Well, as a Corps officer, I have a pastor's heart. And I have a congregation whom I love. And in that time, you grow with your congregation. You go through deaths, you go through marriages, you go through celebrations. We've seen, just in the 3.5 years we've been here, even her grandchildren, how they've grown. When we got here, they were babies. Now they're talking, walking, running. And you develop a family friendship and with your staff as well and coworkers. And it's hard. It's like picking up and moving away from home for the first time.
All right, we just have a few minutes left. Angie, you're transitioning from this role as employee to possibly volunteer, maybe taking a little bit of a break in between. But how do you see your role changing with the Salvation Army?
I don't see it changing. I'm here. I'm available whenever they need me. I'm available. All they have to do is call me. If they get me on the phone.
Answer your phone.
I imagine now, though, that a lot of the paperwork and stuff like that, you won't have to worry about that as much. You can focus maybe more on helping people.
Yes, ma'am. That's the first thing I thought about. I can do more outside.
Let somebody else worry about the paperwork, right?
Right.
That could be Jason. That's the new
Angie, the new
right?
Angie.
Yeah. One thing that impressed me, and I'll say this now speaking, is I've served on the board of directors in the Stanton, Waynesboro, Augusta area for both United Way, and I've worked with the Community Foundation of Central Blue Ridge. And one thing, having that overview, that really strikes me about what the Salvation Army does is that a number of organizations provide help to people, but the Salvation Army provides people to, I guess, kind of using the words of Christ from the Gospels, those who are the least upon me, I guess. The people who don't have anywhere else to turn. Is that the appeal to you personally, both of you personally, to want to work? Is that, you're helping people who have really nowhere else to turn, and you can provide them with services that, can maybe turn their lives around?
Absolutely. Matthew 25:40 says, whatever you've done to the least of these, you've done unto me. When they say, when did we see you in jail? When did we feed you? When did we clothe you? When did you give me water? And he says, whenever you're doing this for others, you're doing it unto me. And that's the heart of our mission, is to take care of people in every aspect. Whatever they need, try to provide what we can do.
It's in our roots with William Booth, our founder, in England, darkest England, and a lot of stuff that was going on back then. It's not changed that much, but he is the one that has set the roots for us. And as far as I know, we've never changed. We've always kept that Christ first, and then we can work, and souls, and then we work on whatever the needs are. That's always been our desire,
Angie, Jason, we want to thank you both for being here with us today on Viewpoints, and we invite you to join the conversation as well. If there was a question we didn't get to today, or you'd like more information, join us on our live blog after the show. That's at WVPT's Facebook page or on AugustaFreePress.com.
Crystal, thanks for this great show, and thanks to our guests once again. And we will wrap here for Viewpoints on WVPT.
Good night.